Hey, Chris Temple of the National Investor here again with you today, and also here representing Strategic Investment Insights, which is some of you already know. We have a big conference coming up in the Chicagoland area at the Lincolnshire Marriott on the 6th and 7th of May. It's a conference unlike any you've gone to. We have a breakout session for public policy and media people and financial professionals to try and explain to them uniquely what the new landscape unfolding in the world and the economy and the markets means to them, how they need to get their heads around it. So if you've not registered yet, do so. Whether you're an individual investor or a broker or media, go to our website, strategicinvestmentinsights.com, and register. If you can't possibly make it in person, register anyway in the appropriate place, which you'll find. And that way you'll have virtual access to all of the discussions, the panels that we're going to have, and so forth. Before I bring on today's guest, Robin Dow, who is the CEO of Silver Eagle Mines, they're about to go public sometime in the coming weeks. Interesting story that I've been eager to get my head around personally because of a new theme that has emerged in the investment world, and that is the new FANGs. For quite a few years now, everybody's invested in Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google, the modern day version of the new Nifty 50, in this case, the Nifty 5. But now we've seen a cyclical bear market begin on Wall Street. We're worried more about commodities, and especially commodities that are closest to home. And interestingly enough, Silver Eagle Mines, with a really cool project it has in Nevada, checks a lot of those boxes. So I'm bringing on Robin Dow now. And again, he is the CEO of Silver Eagle. Robin, good to see you again. It's been a few years.
Well, it was, 2017 in October.
Yeah.
So I'm pleased to be back. I really enjoyed my time then, and I'm looking forward to my time in Chicago coming up in May.
Yeah, well,
So,
you know, as I was looking at your deck and getting to know the story, again, the first thing that struck me was that, okay, this sounds cool because it's part of the new FANGs.
Yes.
New FANGs, of course, one of the A's is agriculture. We've heard all about farming, agriculture, grains, and so forth. Which were starting to be bullish along with other commodities already. And then we had Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and now some of this stuff has kind of gone into warp speed. Tell us about how you came about. And it's a project I think you've had for a while, and sometimes this is what happens. You know, our cover story for the conference is Frontier Lithium and its Electric Avenue in Northwest Ontario, which that company had and sat on for a long time. Furthered it a little bit here and there, but now circumstances and the world have come to meet the importance of this lithium project. Maybe that happens with Silver Eagle. So let's get a dive into this project that you have and tell us about what and why the subject raw rock phosphate. I said that right the first time.
Correct. Yeah, you have to think about it.
Yeah.
No, because it's a really interesting story. What people may sort of remember, the Obama administration put a sage grouse embargo on mining and ranching and everything else around 5 states about 6-7 years ago. And then in the mid-late stages of the Trump administration, that was lifted, but it took the BLM a couple of years to go through guidelines and set up bureaucratically how everybody could go back to work. So now we're ready to go back to work. And in fact, we've already started. But the interesting thing about the raw rock phosphate, 2 things to remember. One, it's organic. Most phosphates that come to us, if they come from Morocco or West Sahara, are contaminated with uranium and have to be processed. The phosphates that come from Belarus and Russia are often processed with some chemicals from the natural gas industry. And the problem with the ones from that processing is the stuff that you buy in a bag to put on your lawn, but
right.
it washes out. You know, the rains come and 80% of the phosphate gets washed into the streams and the lakes, causes the algae bloom. So we were quite lucky when we found this. And we were quite surprised. We had a small raw rock phosphate deposit up here north of Ottawa. So the people who were working on that, Paul Pittman, came to work with me, and we found this, and it made eminent good sense. Because even when you look at raw rock phosphate from north in Idaho, back in the 14-15 range, 2014-15, they did a lot of mining there and shipped it to New Zealand. And then found out the sheep were glowing in the dark because it was contaminated with cadmium. So that didn't work. So we've done extensive testing on ours, and there are no contaminants. It's very simple. We have sort of a bench that runs for about 8 kilometers on surface that we can see. It's about 10 meters wide, 10 meters deep. And we've trenched it and drilled it. And we really have a very easy product, because even though it's 25% P2O5, we're going to blend it down to 8%. I'm sorry, 15% P2O5 will blend down to 8% using the hanging wall, footwall, which is calcium carbonate. You just simply drill it up, you blast it up, dig it up with a backhoe, put it in a truck, take it down 6 kilometers to Montello, a little town, get a warehouse, put your grinder in there, micronize the rock, put it in those big 3-cube bags that you see, get your soil delivered for the summer planting season. And we just put those on a train and drill them and deliver them to California, to the organic farms. Because if you're growing organic food, you have to use organic inputs. And we're the only organic phosphate, is the raw rock direct application phosphate. And we'll grind it down to micronize it to very small, almost like sand granules, a little bigger. And you just spread that on your lawn, or you spread it on your farm. And it takes about 10 years for it to finally react to it disappears, and then you have to have another application, as opposed to getting the first rain, it runs off.
So it's almost like when it's in its natural organic state like this, it's almost like it's a time release type thing, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Just natural over time. The microbes and everything else in the soil eventually break it down.
Yeah.
But it's really easy. And so for us, it's easy to mine. And again, what we have to do is drill to the northeast. The bench that we have runs northeast for 8 kilometers, and to the northwest. And the northeast of that is all this calcium carbonate overburden. And we'll drill down through that. But we think that this is like a cake that you lay on its side, and it slides right underneath. And it could go for a mile or 2 or 3. We don't know. But if you do have to mine underground, then you simply use it like a coal seam. You get those big things with the spinner and the teeth at the front, and it grinds it up and puts it back on a conveyor, and that comes back and dumps in a bucket, and you take it away. So I think we're looking at maybe a total capital cost to go into production a year and a half from now, about $300,000.
Okay.
It's very simple, because most of the stuff we're going to lease, right? You lease the grinder, you lease the backhoe, you lease the trucks.
So the recovery, the mechanism that just goes in and grinds out this thing is kind of like the bad guys used in Die Hard 2, when they were chewing through the concrete underneath the Federal Reserve Bank of New York to get to the gold.
Yeah, I prefer the Pennsylvania coal miners, because they're still mining it that way.
True.
And
yeah, they do.
We'd use that, and it's simple. But the wonderful thing is that it's organic, and it's clean, and it's what we need at this time, particularly since the other phosphates aren't being let into the country, and we don't have a large phosphate production in North America to begin with. A lot of it comes from Agrium in Florida.
Yeah.
But most of Canada is potash, not phosphate.
Mm-hmm.
So this is ideal. And as I say, it's 6 kilometers from the deposit to a little town of Montello, which is just northeast of Elko. The railhead is there. So we just grind it up, put it in the bag, put it on the rail carts, and off it goes to California. Wow. And it's a very simple, inexpensive, reasonable way to go about it. Environmentally friendly. There's no waste rock per se, because even the hanging wall, foot wall, are all calcium carbonate, which are fertilizer in themselves.
Right.
And we could take that and bag it up and grind it up, bag it up, and ship it off with the phosphate. So it's
So
a
when you're
really
looking at,
cool operation.
so Robin, when you're looking at California as a
Yes.
destination, it's not just because it's in close proximity to Nevada. It's
No.
because you've got a lot of customers in cannabis and other industries there
Yes.
where yours might be the only organic phosphate
is.
product they can get.
Yeah, there's a couple of other small mom and pops in
Okay.
the West, but between California and Oregon and Washington, pick one, wherever the bids are.
Right.
And we can, mine this 24/7, 365 if we want.
Wow.
Because yes, it gets cold and snows in Nevada, but it's a fine snow and it's a dry snow. It's not a wet snow, right? Because Nevada's dry. And so it's an exciting opportunity to do something and participate in an industry which is being forced by circumstance to deal with the organic nature of production, which we weren't before because they're able to get other things offshore.
Right.
And the fact that we're in Nevada and that the federal government in the United States is talking about subsidizing certain inputs like lithium into cars, but we think they'll get around to phosphate as well for what we're doing, and potash as well, raw rock potash.
Well, and I've got another company among my recommendations that's in environmental remediation, where a lot of big factory farms have polluted groundwater supplies.
Yep.
And they're looking at the possibility of subsidies there too. That is a big deal. And I can tell you, living in Florida, as I do, we thankfully don't have that problem in St. Augustine, where I'm at on the northeast side of the state on the Atlantic. But already, again, we're in the middle of April. And about as early as it did last year, the middle of March, there's already the initial red tide blooms starting on the west side of the state,
Yes.
where you don't have the tidal variation, averaging 5 feet every day like you do here. And
Yes.
here again, a lot of that is from this type of fertilizer that
Yes.
spills off right away. And it's created a terrible mess. Fish kills, people can't go to the beach over on the west side and so forth. So this is pretty cool. You check quite a few boxes with this story, and I'm going to be curious to see when you tell us a lot more of the details in Chicago, all of the steps to commercialize this. But it sounds like it's relatively seamless.
Well, let me give you two other points. One, we're going to have about 25 million shares outstanding, probably 40 million fully diluted by the time I get to Chicago. Of that, 45% of the stock will be escrowed.
Okay.
So it's going to be a very, very tight float. It's going to be a nice little company to get your investors in on. And secondly, the management, Marco Montesinos, the geologist, is out of Reno, but he and I have been working since the early aughts together. Some of my directors, like Ed Beeman, we've been together since '88. So we've got really good quality, seasoned management and directors. If you take a look at most of our directors, the CFO, corporate secretary, we're all late 60s, early 70s. So we've been doing this a while. I mean, I started doing this in '88. So, we've had some experience, and the idea is to ensure that we communicate what we're doing effectively to the marketplace and keep ourselves focused on putting money into the ground. As I said, we've already started working with the environmental group out of Elko, because we have to have an environmental study.
Right.
That takes 3 seasons, right? Spring, summer, fall. And then they file a report with the BLM. And they're also doing a cultural study where they have to go out and see if there's arrowheads, mastodon bones. God knows, a couple of kids leaving beer bottles behind. We don't know. But really, it's a pretty isolated place. A lot of the area around us is ranchers.
Right.
So,
I've been through there. I can just
Yeah.
about picture it.
Yeah. Well, it's just great. It looks like the phosphate is like pumice. It's very fine. It's called oolite, and it's very easy to grind up. It's not hard like limestone or granite. It's a very soft rock. And so it's going to be a pretty reasonable, easy way to get things moving and to move forward fairly quickly. We hope to be in production Q2, Q3 of 2023.
Cool. Good
So
deal.
it's not going to take long.
Good. Well, I'm anxious to learn a lot more myself and to see you again, Robin. So I appreciate you coming on and coming to the show. And folks, again, register at strategicinvestmentinsights.com. We'd love to see you there. It's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of good companies, a lot of exciting talks on all the different trends that are taking place in the world. And again, if you can't make it in person, make sure you register to get all of the information afterwards. So Robin, thanks much again and look forward to seeing you shortly.
Shall do.